7 young men from South Korea turned a small entertainment company into a global empire worth billions, sold out stadiums on every continent, addressed the United Nations, and reshaped the entire music industry. BTS didn't just break records, they rewrote what was possible for artists outside the Western mainstream. But here's the question nobody in the industry wants to answer honestly. When your art generates that kind of wealth and cultural power, does the system that profits from it actually protect you, or does it just protect itself? Because behind the synchronized choreography and record-shattering album sales, the relationship between BTS and their parent company Hybe has shown cracks that no PR team can smooth over. Members have spoken up, fans have noticed patterns, and the numbers tell a story that doesn't always match the corporate talking points. From promotional imbalances that left some members feeling sidelined, to contract structures that sparked real frustration, to one member receiving a gift so extravagant it made international headlines. What's really going on inside the biggest act in modern music? This isn't gossip. This is documented, on the record, and far more complicated than any headline has made it seem. Let's get into it. Number 7. The Weight of Honest Words. RM. On June 13, 2022, BTS gathered around a dinner table for their annual Festa celebration, a tradition dating back to their very first debut anniversary in 2013. Every year, the 7 members would sit together, reflect on their journey, eat, laugh, and share moments with ARMY, their global fan base. But this particular Festa was different. The cameras were rolling for a live broadcast, and instead of the usual light-hearted banter, the room carried a heaviness that no amount of editing could have softened, because there was no editing. It was raw. And it was the night Kim Namjoon, the leader of the biggest musical act on the planet, admitted to millions of viewers that he had lost his way. To understand why those words landed the way they did, you have to understand who RM was before the world knew his name. Born on September 12, 1994 in Ilsan, South Korea, Namjoon was never meant to be a polished pop idol. He was an underground rapper performing under the name Runch Randa in Seoul's indie hip-hop circuit while still a teenager. Academically gifted, he scored in the top percentiles on South Korea's national university entrance exams. He taught himself English almost entirely by watching the American sitcom Friends with Korean subtitles, a detail he's confirmed in interviews on American talk shows multiple times. When Bang Si-hyuk, the founder of the small entertainment startup Big Hit Entertainment, heard Namjoon rap, he made a decision that would alter the trajectory of global pop culture. He built an entire group around this kid. That group became BTS, Bangtan Sonyeondan, debuting on June 13, 2013 with a sound rooted in hip-hop, social commentary, and raw storytelling about youth, mental health, class inequality, and the suffocating pressure of living in a hyper-competitive society. For years, that identity defined everything they did. Albums like The Most Beautiful Moment in Life series and Wings weren't just commercially successful, they were emotionally layered, lyrically ambitious, and unapologetically Korean. RM wrote and co-produced a significant portion of the material himself. BTS wasn't following the K-pop playbook, they were tearing it apart and rewriting it from scratch. And the world responded in ways that no industry analyst had predicted. They became the first K-pop act to top the Billboard 200, the first to address the United Nations General Assembly in September 2018. And by the early 2020s, they were arguably the most influential musical group on the planet. But then came a shift that would quietly fracture something essential inside the group. In August 2020, BTS released Dynamite, their first track recorded entirely in English. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, a historic milestone for a South Korean act. The follow-up, Butter, released in May 2021, repeated the feat. Then came Permission to Dance in July of the same year, 3 consecutive English-language number ones. From a commercial standpoint, these were unprecedented victories. From an artistic standpoint, several members would later admit the experience left them conflicted in ways they hadn't expected. RM was the most transparent about this internal tension. On the fan communication platform Weverse, and in various press interviews throughout 2021 and 2022, he hinted at a growing disconnect between what the global market demanded from BTS and what the group had originally been built to represent. The English-language singles were massive commercial achievements, but they were also a significant departure from the socially conscious Korean-language storytelling that had earned BTS's fiercely loyal global audience in the first place. RM never publicly trashed the songs. He's far too measured and loyal for that. But he made his internal struggle visible in ways that anyone paying close attention could clearly read. He spoke about feeling like the group had become a machine, about the creative process becoming less personal and more transactional, about reaching a point where he genuinely did not know what kind of story BTS should be telling anymore. These weren't vague artistic complaints of someone looking for sympathy. Coming from the person who had single-handedly shaped the group's entire philosophical, lyrical, and thematic identity for nearly a decade, these words carried a weight that transcended normal industry frustration. Then came the Festa dinner itself. When RM spoke that night, he was not performing. He looked into the camera with the kind of quiet, bone-deep exhaustion that no media training can manufacture, and told the world, in essence, that the members needed time apart, not because they had stopped caring about each other or about ARMY, but because they had genuinely lost sight of who they were as individuals within the enormous, constantly accelerating machinery of BTS. He described it as a full-blown identity crisis born from years of relentless forward momentum. The world tours, the content production schedules, the back-to-back album cycles, the brand endorsements, the variety show appearances, the expectation to be switched on and camera-ready at every single moment of every single day. Jimin was visibly in tears across the table. J-Hope's composure broke. Suga sat in contemplative silence, his expression unreadable. The collective mood in that room was unmistakable. These 7 young men were exhausted, not in their bodies, but in their sense of self. The announcement that followed, that BTS would enter an indefinite group hiatus to focus on individual solo projects and eventually South Korea's mandatory military service, detonated across the entertainment industry like a seismic event. Hybe Corporation's stock price cratered in the following trading sessions, with the company shedding roughly 25% of its market capitalization, billions of dollars evaporating because 7 men said they needed to breathe. That financial freefall revealed something the company's own earnings reports had long confirmed. BTS wasn't merely Hybe's flagship act. BTS, functionally, was the company's economic engine. And when the leader of that engine sat on a live broadcast and declared the current trajectory unsustainable for them as human beings, the markets interpreted it exactly as what it was, a structural warning about the foundation itself. What made RM's candor so remarkable was the industry context surrounding it. K-pop idols operate within a system of extraordinary discipline and institutional control. Trainees sign binding contracts as teenagers, endure years of grueling training in vocals, choreography, foreign languages, and media deportment, and are expected to maintain meticulously curated public personas at all times. Speaking openly about dissatisfaction with your label or your situation is not just uncommon. Within this ecosystem, it borders on professional heresy. RM was careful not to aim his words directly at Hybe that night, and he never has. He's too strategic, too aware of the people who invested in BTS's early years for that. But what he did was arguably more powerful. He laid bare a reality that the glossy exterior of the K-pop machine almost never allows its audience to witness. That staggering commercial success does not guarantee creative fulfillment. That global adoration cannot fill the void left when an artist no longer recognizes the music coming out under their own name. After the hiatus began, RM channeled everything he had been carrying into Indigo, his debut solo album, released on December 2, 2022. The project was a deliberate, almost defiant counterpoint to everything BTS had become at its commercial zenith. It featured collaborations with Erykah Badu, Anderson .Paak, Eugene of Cherry Filter, and Tableau of Epic High, artists rooted in soul, alternative hip-hop, and Korean indie rock, rather than algorithmic pop formulas. Indigo was not engineered to chase streaming records, it was engineered to reclaim something personal, and it debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 regardless, proving what the industry often pretends is impossible, that artistic integrity and commercial viability can coexist. His second album, Right Place, Wrong Person, released in May 2024, pushed even deeper into introspective, genre-defying territory. RM was finally making music on his own terms, the kind of music that the relentless BTS schedule had never left room for. But here's the thing about RM's Festa confession that doesn't get discussed enough. It didn't just explain why BTS needed a pause, it cracked open a door that exposed a much larger, far more uncomfortable question about how HYB had been managing these 7 men behind the polished curtain. And once that door was open, other members began walking through it, carrying stories that pointed not just at personal frustration, but directly at the system itself.
Number 6. The Uneven Stage, V. Before BTS ever performed their first note in public, Kim Tae-young already knew what it felt like to be kept out of the frame. Born on December 30, 1995, in Daegu, South Korea, and raised in the rural farming community of Gaechong in South Gyeongsang Province, Tae-young's journey toward becoming one of the most recognizable faces in global pop culture began with an absence. In the months leading up to BTS's debut on June 13, 2013, Big Hit Entertainment, the company that would later rebrand itself as Hybe, introduced 6 of the 7 members to the public through a careful rollout of blog posts, video logs, and social media content designed to build pre-debut anticipation. But there was a 7th member the public didn't know existed. Tae-young was classified internally as a hidden member, his identity deliberately concealed from fans until the actual debut showcase. The company positioned it as a strategic surprise, a marketing tactic to generate maximum buzz on debut day, and it worked, technically. People were indeed surprised. But for a teenage trainee who had endured the same years of exhausting preparation as his 6 bandmates, watching them build real connections with a growing fan base while he remained nameless and invisible, created a dynamic from the very first day that would quietly echo through the years in ways Big Hit likely never calculated. Once the curtain lifted, though, Tae-young, performing under the stage name V, became impossible to overlook. His deep baritone voice was unlike anything the mainstream K-pop landscape was producing at the time, a rich, textured instrument in an industry that overwhelmingly rewarded bright, high-register vocals. His stage presence was magnetic and genuinely unpredictable, shifting between raw intensity and disarming warmth in ways that defied the choreographed precision expected of idols. His visual impact was so immediate that clips of him regularly went viral among people who had never heard a single BTS song. International media outlets began calling him the member who turns non-fans into fans. Within the BTS catalog itself, V delivered some of the group's most critically praised solo performances. Stigma from the 2016 album Wings showcased a neo-soul vocal approach that stood out sharply from the album's harder hip-hop edges.
Singularity, the opening track for 2018's Love Yourself Tear, was a contemporary R&B piece paired with a choreography-driven performance that music critics favorably compared to the artistry of Frank Ocean and Daniel Caesar. Outside the group, V recorded Christmas Tree for the original soundtrack of the hit Korean drama Our Beloved Summer in December 2021, and it charted on the Billboard Hot 100, a notable achievement for any original soundtrack recording, let alone one from a Korean drama. By every measurable standard, vocal distinctiveness, visual resonance, individual track performance, a personal Instagram following that eventually surpassed 60 million, V was one of the most commercially valuable and culturally visible members of BTS. And that is precisely what made the events surrounding his first solo album so difficult for anyone watching closely to reconcile with any corporate claim that Hybe invested equally in all seven. Layover was released on September 8, 2023, and it was a project that carried V's artistic fingerprints entirely. Blending jazz, R&B, and bossa nova textures, the album was intimate, deliberately understated, and structurally unconventional by K-pop standards. Tracks like Slow Dancing and Love Me Again were not constructed for streaming algorithm optimization. They were built for emotional resonance and repeated listening. Layover was V's creative declaration, a statement about the kind of artist he intended to be beyond the synchronized formations and stadium-scale spectacles of BTS. And commercially, it delivered. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, a result that most solo artists in any genre would consider a career highlight. But here is where the documented record begins to diverge sharply from Hybe's implicit promise of equitable treatment. Just 2 months before Layover dropped, Jungkook had released the single 7 featuring Lotto on July 14, 2023. The promotional infrastructure deployed behind that single was massive and highly visible. Jungkook appeared on major American television programs and conducted extensive international press. Hybe secured prominent Billboard placements in key global cities, including a large-scale Times Square installation in New York. The song received aggressive Spotify playlist positioning, with industry observers and fan data trackers noting it was added to a significantly higher number of editorial playlists compared to other BTS members' solo releases. The official BTS and Hybe social media accounts promoted 7 with a frequency and energy that was not subjective, it was countable. When Jungkook's full solo album, Golden, followed in November 2023, the cycle intensified further, with listening parties, international press junkets, content partnerships, and visual campaigns that spanned continents. Now compare that documented effort to what V received for Layover. Fans within the ARMY community, not casual commenters, but dedicated data analysts who had been systematically logging promotional activity across every BTS solo release with timestamps, screenshots, and platform metrics, compiled evidence of a measurable gap. Fewer official social media posts from Hybe's accounts promoting V's album compared to Jungkook's releases. Fewer visible outdoor advertising campaigns in major markets. Less prominent Spotify editorial playlist placement. Fewer facilitated media appearances in Western press. These observations were not based on feelings, they were based on comparative data that fans published across Twitter, Reddit, and Weverse, with side-by-side documentation that anyone could verify independently. This was never about pitting V against Jungkook personally. The two shared one of the closest and most publicly visible friendships within BTS, a bond so well known that fans had long used the affectionate nickname Taekook. The frustration was aimed entirely at the corporate structure. If HYB was the single entity responsible for marketing and promoting all 7 members' solo projects, and if the same company was allocating visibly different levels of resources, budget, and institutional energy to different releases, then the question was not whether V's music deserved better. Layover answered that by charting at number 2 worldwide with whatever support it did receive. The real question was whether HYBE had decided, either through deliberate strategic calculus or through institutional carelessness, that certain members warranted significantly more corporate investment than others. And that question became even harder to wave away when you factored in the timeline V was operating under. On December 11, 2023, Kim Tae-young reported for his mandatory military service, meaning the entire promotional window for Layover was compressed into roughly 3 months. HYBE knew his enlistment date well in advance. They knew the timeline was not flexible, and yet the level of promotional effort his fan base documented did not reflect the urgency that a shrinking window before an 18-month military absence should have logically demanded. V entered the military with Layover as his sole solo album, a deeply personal project that debuted at number 2 on the most competitive album chart on Earth, with what his global fanbase calculated was a fraction of the promotional muscle his groupmates received for comparable releases. Whether you interpret that gap as a strategic miscalculation, a resource allocation oversight, or a conscious prioritization choice, the outcome registered the same way for millions of fans watching in real time. One of the most popular and artistically distinctive voices in BTS went into military service, carrying the quiet weight of feeling undersupported by the very company his work had helped build into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. But the promotional imbalance documented around V's Layover wasn't a standalone incident. It fit into a broader pattern, one that another member's experience would soon make considerably harder for HYBE to frame as coincidence.
Number 5. The price of being first. J-Hope. When BTS gathered around that fateful dinner table during the emotional June 2022 Festa broadcast to announce an indefinite pause on group activities, the immense psychological and commercial burden of launching the group's official solo era did not fall on the vocal line or the group's leader. It fell squarely on the shoulders of Jung Ho-sok. Born on February 18, 1994, in the southern city of Gwangju, South Korea, J-Hope entered Big Hit Entertainment not as an aspiring idol singer, but as a formidable street dancer with a growing national reputation. Operating under the stage name Smile Hoya as part of the Gwangju-based underground dance crew Neuron, Ho-sok had already won regional dance competitions and mastered street styles ranging from popping and locking to hip-hop choreography before he ever stepped inside a recording booth. When he joined Big Hit as a trainee in December 2010, his presence fundamentally anchored the group's physical identity. Yet his path to debut was nothing but smooth. During the grueling trainee years, when Big Hit was struggling financially and operating out of a tiny office in Seoul, Ho-sok actually decided to leave the company and return home to Gwangju. It was Kim Namjoon who intervened, convincing Big Hit executives that the group could not survive without Jung Ho-sok, while convincing Ho-sok that his future belonged with the members. Ho-sok returned, driven by absolute trust in his bandmates, and stepped into his role as BTS's main dancer and dance captain. For nearly a decade, J-Hope was the unyielding architect of BTS's stage synchronization, running relentless multi-hour practice sessions, correcting micro-movements, and ensuring that all 7 members performed with mathematical precision on stadium stages across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Over time, he expanded his artistic range far beyond choreography, evolving into a skilled songwriter, rapper, and music producer. He co-wrote key hooks and verses for defining BTS tracks like Mic Drop, Run, Baepsae, and Blood, Sweat, and Tears, while developing a vibrant solo discography.
In March 2018, he released his debut mixtape, Hope World, which peaked at number 38 on the Billboard 200, followed by his 2019 hit single Chicken Noodle Soup, featuring American singer Becky G, which charted on the Billboard Hot 100 and demonstrated his innate ability to connect global street dance culture with mainstream pop metrics. But when the decision was made in mid-2022 to transition from group endeavors to individual solo projects, J-Hope was selected to step onto the battlefield first. Being the initial soloist meant operating in uncharted territory with zero safety net. There were no corporate blueprints for a BTS solo rollout, no internal data predicting how global fans would split their purchasing power, and no guarantee that Western media would treat an individual member with the same gravitas as the full group. Despite the pressure, on July 15, 2022, J-Hope released his debut full-length studio album, Jack in the Box. Artistically, the project was a masterclass in creative bravery, stripping away the bright, effervescent sunshine persona he had projected for years as BTS's emotional battery. Hoseok delivered a dark, raw, 90s-inspired hip-hop album rooted in boom-bap beats and industrial rock textures. Taking inspiration from the Greek myth of Pandora's box, tracks like More and Arson explored intense themes of greed, internal ambition, artistic pressure, and the suffocating burden of global fame. The album was celebrated by international music critics, earning high marks from publications like Rolling Stone, NME, and Consequence for its cohesive sonic narrative and unwillingness to play to safe pop trends. To celebrate the launch, J-Hope hosted a star-studded listening party on the top floor of Hybe's headquarters in Yongsan, Seoul, Korea, attended by iconic Korean music figures, including Tiger JK, Yoon Mi-rae, Simon Dominic, Taeyang, and Jung-hwa, proving his deep respect within the South Korean music community. However, behind the critical acclaim, a corporate decision executed by Hybe management ignited an immediate, widespread controversy regarding fairness, distribution equity, and long-term artist investment. In an official decision framed by Hybe as an experimental, eco-friendly initiative aimed at reducing plastic waste, the initial physical release of Jack in the Box on July 15, 2022, was stripped of a standard compact disc format. Instead of releasing a traditional CD package containing a physical disc, lyric book, and tangible collectible materials, Hybe issued the album exclusively as a digital Weverse album. Customers who purchased this physical package received a small, thin paper holder containing a QR code card and photographic cards, requiring buyers to scan the code and download the music through a smartphone application. Crucially, there were no physical compact discs manufactured or distributed to major brick-and-mortar retail stores across North America or Europe, such as Target, Walmart, or Amazon, during the album's crucial debut tracking week. In the global music industry, pure physical CD sales are the single most influential driver for securing top positions on major album charts, including the Billboard 200 in the United States and the Hanteo and Circle charts in South Korea. Tracking bodies like Luminate calculate pure physical album sales with high weighting, meaning that physical disc availability in major retail stores is indispensable for maximizing an album's commercial chart footprint. By denying J-Hope a standard physical CD release on day one, Hybe effectively placed an artificial ceiling on his pure sales metrics and debut Billboard 200 position. Dedicated fan analysts, music journalists, and chart data trackers quickly published comparative reports detailing the structural disadvantage Hoseok was forced to navigate. Industry observers pointed out that physical CDs had always been standard for BTS group releases and questioned why Hybe chose the debut solo launch of the group's first soloist to test an experimental CD-less digital format. Frustration intensified in the following months when subsequent solo projects released by other BTS members under Hybe were granted immediate, wide-scale traditional physical CD pressings featuring multiple cover variations, lavish physical photo books, and prominent display space in global retail chains. J-Hope had effectively absorbed the commercial risk of Hybe's digital format experiment at the exact moment his solo market viability was being judged by global media and industry analysts. Nevertheless, J-Hope proved his star power entirely through live performance and individual grit. On July 31, 2022, just 16 days after his album dropped, Hoseok took the stage at Lollapalooza at Grant Park in Chicago, Illinois, making history as the first South Korean artist to headline a main stage at a major American music festival. Performing a relentless 18-song set over 70 minutes before a festival crowd of over 100,000 people, a massive gathering dubbed Hybe by media outlets, he delivered a commanding performance that dominated festival coverage. The Chicago Tribune described his set as a monumental shift in festival history, while festival organizer Perry Farrell publicly commended his unmatched discipline and stage presence. Yet the question of the missing physical CDs lingered as a permanent mark of corporate miscalculation. The validity of the fan outrage was undeniable when Hybe finally bowed to market pressure over a year later, releasing Jack in the Box Hope Edition on standard physical compact disc on August 18, 2023. The physical CD edition, featuring physical disc media, photo books, and bonus live tracks, instantly propelled the album back onto the Billboard 200, where it soared to number 6, proving conclusively that consumer demand for a physical CD had existed all along, but had been artificially suppressed by Hybe's original corporate strategy in July 2022. J-Hope handled the situation with characteristic dignity, refusing to criticize the label publicly, but the documented timeline laid bare an uncomfortable truth. Being the trailblazer meant taking the hit for corporate experimentation. But if J-Hope's debut exposed how strategic distribution choices could restrict an artist's physical footprint, the experience of the next member would reveal how administrative and operational oversights could directly compromise a record-breaking single at the precise moment it was taking over the world.
Number 4. The Filtered Milestone, Jimin. When the history of global pop music in the 21st century is written, April 3, 2023, will stand as a landmark date. On that Monday, Billboard announced that Like Crazy, the synth-pop lead single from Park Jimin's debut solo album Face, had entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 1. It was an extraordinary achievement. Jimin had become the first South Korean solo artist in the 65-year history of the Billboard chart to reach the summit, outperforming every Western pop giant during its debut tracking week. But what should have been a moment of undisputed corporate triumph for Hybe quickly turned into one of the most heavily scrutinized data controversies in modern chart history, an episode that exposed how administrative inertia and supply chain failures could undermine an artist's record-breaking momentum. To understand the emotional weight of that milestone, you have to understand where Park Jimin came from. Born on October 13, 1995, in the coastal city of Busan, South Korea, Jimin entered the entertainment world through a path distinctly different from his group mates. While RM and Suga came from underground hip-hop and J-Hope from street dance, Jimin was a classical modern dance prodigy. Attending the Busan High School of Arts, he entered as the top student in the modern dance department, demonstrating a fluid, expressive movement style that combined ballet mechanics with contemporary floor work. When his dance teacher recognized his rare talent and suggested he audition for Big Hit Entertainment in 2012, Jimin moved to Seoul with only a single duffel bag. He had the shortest training period of any BTS member, less than a single year, which meant he had to learn pop choreography, vocal technique, and stagecraft under immense time pressure while constantly facing the threat of elimination before debut. He survived multiple grueling internal evaluations through sheer stubborn perseverance. Driven by a legendary work ethic that his bandmates have repeatedly documented in interviews, practicing vocal scales and dance routines until 4 in the morning and sleeping on studio floors, Jimin secured his place in BTS as a lead vocalist and main dancer. Over the next decade, his distinctive high-register vocal tone and emotionally charged solo tracks like Live in 2016, Serendipity in 2017, and Filter in 2020 became central pillars of BTS's musical identity. To craft Efface, Jimin traveled between Seoul and Los Angeles, working intensely with longtime big hit producer Dog alongside international songwriters to shape a modern synth-pop and alternative R&B soundscape. When Jimin released Face on March 24, 2023, it was a deeply personal exploration of emotional turmoil, isolation during the global pandemic, and the struggle to regain self-worth. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, while its synth-pop single Like Crazy generated staggering sales. In its first tracking week in the United States, Like Crazy accumulated 254,000 pure sales across digital downloads and physical CD singles, alongside 10 million streams and 64,000 radio airplay impressions. Those pure sales numbers were colossal, easily surpassing the combined digital sales of the entire top 10 on the Hot 100 that week. Jimin had accomplished what no Korean soloist had ever done, validating his standing as a global pop force entirely on the strength of his artistry and a fiercely dedicated fan base. But then came tracking week 2, and with it, an unprecedented chart collapse that stunned industry analysts. On the Billboard Hot 100 chart updated for the week of April 15, 2023, Like Crazy plunged from number 1 to number 45, the largest single week drop from the top spot in the history of the Billboard Hot 100 chart. While chart drops in subsequent weeks are normal as initial sales spikes settle, a drop of 44 places raised immediate red flags among data scientists, chart trackers, and music journalists. When data analysts examined the underlying numbers provided by Luminate, the official data provider for Billboard, the reason for the sudden drop became clear, and it ignited widespread anger aimed directly at both Luminate's opaque rules and Hybe's management. In week 2, Luminate applied an aggressive, unannounced filtering methodology to digital download purchases originating from official artist web stores, including the US Weverse store managed by Hybe's subsidiary. Reports indicated that over 230,000 legitimate digital single purchases made by fans were suddenly classified as bulk purchases or non-eligible transactions and mass deleted from the official chart count. Over 80% of the song's pure sales evaporated overnight under these revised filtering metrics. The sudden rule enforcement triggered massive media coverage, with outlets like Forbes, Billboard, and NME publishing articles analyzing the controversy, while fans organized global social media campaigns under hashtags like Luminate Sabotage and Hybe Protect Your Artist, demanding transparency and corporate advocacy. Yet despite the global uproar and calls from media outlets for clarification, Hybe maintained a policy of official corporate silence. Rather than issuing a public statement defending their artist's sales integrity or directly pressing Luminate and Billboard for transparent accounting, an action major Western record labels routinely take when their marquee artists face chart tracking anomalies, Hybe management remained silent. Furthermore, the data revealed an equally damaging issue on Hybe's side, a complete logistical failure to maintain physical CD single inventory during critical sales windows. During week 1 and week 2, demand for physical CD singles of Like Crazy in the United States was overwhelmingly high. Yet the official US Weverse store ran out of physical CD singles almost immediately. Rather than having a pre-planned, responsive supply chain capable of rapidly restocking physical inventory to sustain multi-week chart performance, a standard practice deployed by Western major labels for top-tier artists, Hybe left the physical singles marked as sold out for extended periods during crucial tracking days. Furthermore, industry observers noted a stark contrast in radio airplay promotion. While major American record labels aggressively service top-charting singles to US pop radio stations with financial incentives and promotional tours to secure sustained spin counts, Like Crazy received virtually zero structured radio push in the United States. With only 64,000 radio impressions in its debut week compared to the tens of millions enjoyed by domestic pop tracks, the single was reliant almost entirely on pure sales and organic streams. When Hybe failed to supply physical CD inventory and Luminate wiped out the bulk of digital sales, the song had no radio safety net to cushion its fall. The frustration among fans grew deeper when comparative analyses were published later in the year. When subsequent releases by other artists under the broader Hybe umbrella were launched, observers noted far more robust logistical planning, including continuous physical CD restocking, multi-version vinyl pressings available at launch, and organized radio promotion packages. Jimin had delivered a historic #1 record through his own talent and fan support, yet the corporate infrastructure responsible for maintaining that momentum appeared caught off guard, unprepared, or unwilling to deploy the necessary resources to defend the historic milestone. Jimin himself addressed his fans with characteristic humility on live broadcasts, thanking them for the #1 achievement and choosing to celebrate the historic milestone rather than dwell on chart mechanics. But for observers tracking the administrative side of the music business, the data told an undeniable story. Park Jimin had smashed through one of the highest glass ceilings in music history, only to have the structural foundation beneath him crack due to corporate supply chain gaps and administrative passivity. Yet as frustrating as Jimin's chart experience was, the pattern of structural friction within Hybe was not limited to promotion and distribution, it extended into the very contracts and internal financial arrangements that bound the members to the company. Number 3, The Architect's Reckoning, Suga. Long before Hybe became a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate occupying a 26-story skyscraper in Seoul, Min Yoongi was counting pocket change on the streets of Daegu to decide whether he could afford a 50-cent bowl of black bean noodles or the bus ticket home. Born on March 9, 1993, in Daegu, South Korea, Yoongi began composing music and arranging beats at the age of 13. By his late teens, he was active in the local underground hip-hop scene as a producer and rapper under the moniker Gloss, working with the underground crew D-Town. He was not chasing celebrity or idol glamour, he was obsessed with audio engineering, MIDI sequencing, and lyrical craft. When he sold beats to local artists, he was frequently scammed, left unpaid by unscrupulous promoters, or forced to choose between buying studio equipment and eating dinner. In 2010, Yoongi placed second in a nationwide rap and production competition hosted by Big Hit Entertainment, a struggling startup label buried in debt. When founder Bang Si-hyuk recruited him, he famously promised Yoongi that he would not have to dance, that he would be part of a hip-hop group focused purely on composition and rapping. That promise, as Yoongi would later joke on television broadcasts, turned out to be completely false. Big Hit pivoted to a traditional idol group format, forcing Yoongi into relentless dance training. Yet the financial strain on Big Hit in those early years was so severe that trainees were barely scraping by. To cover his basic living expenses and tuition, Yoongi took a part-time job as a bicycle delivery driver in Seoul while undergoing grueling 16-hour daily training sessions. In late 2012, while making a delivery in rainy conditions, Yoongi was struck by a car, fracturing his shoulder and dislocating the joint. Terrified that Big Hit would drop him from the debut lineup if they found out he was injured and unable to perform, Yoongi hid the injury from company executives, telling them he had simply fallen down the stairs. He performed through excruciating, unmedicated pain for years, executing intense BTS choreography while his shoulder joint deteriorated into a severe posterior labral tear. When Bang Si-hyuk eventually discovered the truth behind Yoongi's shoulder injury, that the young trainee was secretly working dangerous night shifts to afford food and housing while Big Hit was on the verge of bankruptcy, the founder paid Yoongi's university tuition fees out of his own pocket to relieve his financial burden. That act built a deep personal bond between Yoongi and Big Hit management, but it also cemented a complex psychological dynamic where Yoongi felt an immense personal obligation to repay the company's early investment through relentless work. It was only when the pain became unbearable during rehearsals in 2020, 8 years after the accident, that he finally underwent major shoulder surgery, forcing him into a multi-month medical hiatus. That relentless work ethic defined his contribution to BTS. Under the moniker Suga, he became one of the primary sonic architects of the group's discography, writing, producing, and arranging iconic tracks including Tomorrow, Let Me Know, First Love, Sisa, Telepathy, and Life Goes On. With over 160 registered songs under the Korea Music Copyright Association, Suga established himself as one of the most prolific artist-producers in modern Korean music history. Outside BTS, his production touch became legendary, crafting chart-topping hits for external artists including Saran's Wine, Hybe's We Don't Talk Together, IU's 8, and PSY's global smash That, which he co-wrote, produced, and featured in. But it was through his solo alter ego, August D, an anagram of DT Suga, referencing his hometown of Daegu, that Minyoongi expressed his most unfiltered thoughts about the music industry, corporate greed, and the human cost of success. Across his trilogy of solo projects, his 2016 self-titled mixtape, 2020's D2, and his official April 2023 studio album D-Day, Suga laid bare issues that K-pop idols were traditionally forbidden to discuss. He wrote openly about severe depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and social phobia in tracks like The Last, while delivering scathing critiques of capitalistic exploitation, corporate manipulation, and the idol factory system in tracks like Strange and Daytwitter. For Suga, music was never a corporate asset to be optimized by algorithms, it was a visceral survival mechanism. That sense of duty reached a critical breaking point in early 2018. BTS had achieved global fame with Love Yourself, yet behind the scenes, the 7 members were facing severe physical and emotional exhaustion under Big Hit's crushing production and touring schedule. During the 2018 Net Asian Music Awards in Hong Kong, Jin brought the entire stadium to tears by publicly revealing that the group had suffered such intense psychological stress that they had discussed disbanding earlier that year. It was during this high-stakes period of existential crisis that Big Hit offered the members an early 7-year contract renewal in October 2018, more than a year before their original contracts were set to expire. The renewal promised greater artist autonomy, equity shares in the company, and strategic support, securing the group's long-term future. Yet for Suga and his bandmates, signing that early extension meant committing another 7 years of their youth to a corporate machinery that was growing larger, more complex, and increasingly demanding by the day. When BTS announced their hiatus in June 2022, Suga took on a responsibility that no other member attempted, a massive, single-handed global arena tour. From April 26 to August 6, 2023, Suga embarked on the Suga August D Tour D-Day, performing 28 sold-out shows across North America and Asia, including multi-night runs at Belmont Park, Prudential Center, Kia Forum, and the KSPO Dome in Seoul. As the sole member of BTS to execute a full solo world tour, Suga carried an incredible physical and logistical load. The tour generated over $57 million in revenue and drew over 290,000 attendees, single-handedly stabilizing Hybe's live performance revenue streams during a quarter when full group touring revenue had plummeted to zero. Yet during this exact period, the contrast between Suga's artistic philosophy and Hybe's corporate direction became glaringly visible. As Hybe expanded into a multi-label conglomerate, executive leadership aggressively pushed into corporate diversification, investing heavily in non-fungible tokens, Web3 platforms, artificial intelligence voice technologies, and mobile gaming applications. In documentary footage for Suga, Road to D-Day, and in candid interview conversations on his talk show Satwita, Suga repeatedly expressed a skeptical, back-to-basics perspective on music creation. He emphasized that over-commercialization, algorithmic shortcuts, and corporate buzzwords could never replace the fundamental human connection forged through authentic songwriting and live instrument performance. While Hybe executives were pitching investors on automated content ecosystems and scalable multi-label models, Suga was sitting in small studio spaces with veteran musicians like Ryuichi Sakamoto and El Capitan, obsessing over acoustic drum tones and guitar arrangements. The tension was subtle but profound. The man whose touring revenue was anchoring the company's financial balance sheet was openly advocating for artistic integrity over corporate financialization. Furthermore, Suga was acutely aware of the ticking clock regarding South Korea's mandatory military service. As the second oldest member of the group, born in March 1993, his enlistment window was closing rapidly. Despite carrying the physical legacy of his 2012 shoulder injury, which eventually qualified him for social service agent status rather than active duty, Suga completed his grueling 28-date tour, delivered his final live concerts in Seoul alongside surprise appearances from RM, Jimin, and Jungkook, and reported for his mandatory service on September 22, 2023, without asking for delays or corporate exemptions. Min Yoongi had given 13 years of his life, his physical health, and his creative labor to build an empire from scratch, consistently choosing artistic truth over corporate convenience. But if Suga's journey highlighted the philosophical gap between an uncompromising creator and a rapidly expanding corporate entity, the experience of the oldest member would bring the reality of contract timing, corporate promises, and personal sacrifice into sharp focus. Number 2, the sacrificial anchor, Jin. Long before he became known worldwide as Worldwide Handsome, Kim Seok-jin was an aspiring actor walking down the street to attend classes at Konkak University in Seoul. Born on December 4, 1992, in Gwacheon, Gyeonggi Province, South Korea, Seok-jin possessed no formal background in vocal performance, music production, or choreography. In fact, when an SM Entertainment talent scout had approached him on the street years earlier, middle schooler Seok-jin ran away, believing the recruiter was a scammer. But when a big hit entertainment manager spotted him stepping off a bus in 2011, Seok-jin was persuaded to audition for the struggling hip-hop label. At the time, Seok-jin was pursuing a degree in film and theater, aiming for a career on screen rather than on the music stage. Upon joining Big Hit, he was thrust into a grueling trainee regimen alongside teenagers who had been dancing and rapping for years. Beyond his vocal development, Seok-jin took on an indispensable personal role behind dorm doors. As the oldest member in a household of 7 young trainees, Seok-jin used his personal allowance and money from his family to buy groceries, cooking hot meals for younger members like Jungkook, Jimin, and V when Big Hit's daily food budget was severely restricted. He assumed the role of the group's emotional anchor, maintaining an unpretentious, humorous atmosphere to diffuse pre-debut anxiety and foster genuine brotherly bonds among teenagers living in overcrowded basement dormitories. Starting from absolute zero, Seok-jin endured grueling midnight vocal lessons and dance rehearsals, working tirelessly to bridge the skill gap. His perseverance paid off. Seok-jin transformed himself into a formidable lead vocalist whose rich, emotive tenor became the emotional heart of BTS's ballads. His solo tracks, from the dramatic vulnerability of Awake in 2016, to the soaring self-acceptance anthem Epiphany in 2018, to the energetic space pop track Moon in 2020, demonstrated not only vocal range but an extraordinary ability to connect emotionally with millions of listeners worldwide. Yet despite his pivotal role in BTS, Kim Seok-jin found himself at the epicenter of a fierce, multi-year national controversy that no artist should have had to navigate alone, a situation created by South Korean politics and exacerbated by Hybe's corporate maneuvering. Under South Korea's Military Service Act, all able-bodied Korean men are required to serve 18 to 21 months in the armed forces before reaching the age of 30. While the law provided military service exemptions or alternative civil service pathways for Olympic medalists, Asian Games gold winners, and award-winning classical musicians who enhanced national prestige, pop culture artists were strictly excluded from these exemptions. In December 2020, South Korea's National Assembly passed a specific amendment to the Military Service Act, popularly dubbed the BTS Law. This amendment permitted pop culture artists who had received government cultural awards, such as the Order of Cultural Merit awarded to BTS by the South Korean president in 2018, to defer their mandatory military service until the age of 30. This granted Jin a temporary extension through December 2022. However, rather than resolving the issue, the statutory deferral merely prolonged the media frenzy, converting every BTS press conference into a political inquiry. As BTS achieved historic global milestones, topping the Billboard charts, selling out international stadiums, and contributing billions of dollars annually to South Korea's economy. Politicians across the political spectrum used BTS's name to debate public policy, dragging the members into a toxic public discourse regarding duty, fairness, and privilege. Throughout this period, Jin maintained a consistent public stance, stating in multiple press conferences that he viewed military service as an honorable duty and would report for service whenever the government called. However, in April 2022, corporate executives at Hybe made a move that severely compromised Jin's public standing. During an official press conference held in Las Vegas prior to BTS's permission to dance on stage stadium concerts, Hybe's chief communication officer, Lee Jin-hyung, made public statements urging the South Korean National Assembly to reach a swift decision on the proposed military exemption law. He stated publicly that the uncertainty surrounding enlistment was creating hardship for the members and requested that Parliament make a decision before the end of their legislative term. While Hybe framed this statement as corporate advocacy, the public fallout was immediate and harsh. South Korean public opinion, highly sensitive to issues of mandatory military equity, reacted with sharp skepticism. Commentators and online forums accused Hybe of using BTS's immense clout to lobby for corporate financial self-interest, while Jin was unfairly branded by critics as attempting to evade military service, despite having never asked for an exemption himself. Hybe had effectively placed their oldest artist in the firing line of public judgment to pressure legislators on behalf of the company's stock value and future revenue projections. Realizing that the corporate and political stalemate was tarnishing their hard-earned reputation, BTS took matters into their own hands. In October 2022, following their historic promotional concert for the 2030 World Expo in Busan, Big Hit Music officially announced that all 7 members would fulfill their military obligations, starting with Jin. Jin voluntarily withdrew his formal request to delay his enlistment, ending years of speculative media coverage with a single, decisive move. Before departing, Jin released his debut solo single, The Astronaut, on October 28, 2022, an emotional track co-written with British rock band Coldplay. Because of his looming enlistment deadline, Jin had less than 6 weeks to release and promote the project. Yet he made the most of his brief window, traveling to Buenos Aires, Argentina, to perform the song live alongside Chris Martin during Coldplay's stadium tour before 80,000 fans. In the final weeks before his boot camp entry date in December 2022, Jin worked at an exhausting pace to record content for fans to watch during his 18-month absence. He filmed guest appearances on major South Korean variety shows including Running Man, YouTube series Halmyangsu, and Suga's talk show Sachwita, while preparing custom monthly video messages for ARMY that were released on YouTube on the 12th of every month throughout his service. On December 13, 2022, Kim Jin officially enlisted as an active duty soldier at the 5th Infantry Division Recruit Training Center in Yongkyeon, Gyeonggi Province, near the North Korean border. During his 18 months of service, Jin served with distinction, eventually being selected as an assistant drill instructor and earning early promotions to corporal and sergeant due to exemplary conduct. Furthermore, in September 2023, while Jin was serving on active duty in Yongkyeon, Hybe announced that all 7 BTS members had signed their second official contract renewals early, reaffirming their commitment to resume full group activities around 2025. Jin's willingness to lead by example and complete his duty without incident created the legal and public stability necessary for Hybe to finalize those historic renewals. On June 12, 2024, Jin became the first member of BTS to complete his military obligation and receive an official discharge. Demonstrating his unwavering dedication to his craft and fans, Jin rested for less than 24 hours before hosting a live event for 1,000 fans during BTS Festa on June 13, 2024. Just weeks later, in July 2024, Jin was selected to represent South Korea as an official torchbearer for the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics, carrying the Olympic flame through the streets of Paris near the Louvre Museum before a global audience of millions. Jin had served as the sacrificial anchor for BTS, bearing the brunt of political debate, corporate pressure, and military isolation so that the group could maintain its integrity. But as Jin returned to stabilize Hybe's public image and step back into the spotlight, the focus of the entertainment industry shifted to the member whose solo rollout had received the absolute pinnacle of corporate backing, global luxury partnerships, and an unprecedented gift that sealed his status as Hybe's ultimate global asset. Number 1, the golden asset and the luxury crown, Jungkook. When 14-year-old Jungkook stood before the judges at the Superstar K3 auditions in Busan in 2011, he was so painfully shy that he could barely sing. He was eliminated from the competition, but his raw potential triggered a frenzy among talent scouts. 7 different entertainment agencies, including established powerhouses like JYP, SM, Cube, and Starship, attempted to sign the middle school prodigy. Yet Jungkook chose Big Hit Entertainment, a small, financially unstable agency operating out of a cramped building in Seoul. His reason was simple and entirely personal. He had seen Kim Namjoon rap in person and was so awestruck by RM's charisma that he wanted to train alongside him. Recognizing his extraordinary potential, Big Hit sent 15-year-old Jungkook to Los Angeles in the summer of 2012 to undergo intensive dance training at Movement Lifestyle, where he studied urban dance, body isolation, and performance dynamics under prominent American choreographers. When BTS debuted on June 13, 2013, Jungkook was just 15 years old. Positioned as the group's main vocalist, lead dancer, sub-rapper, and visual center, he earned the nickname Golden Magne from RM, a title reflecting his rare ability to excel at every discipline in pop performance. Over the next decade, Jungkook's powerful, versatile vocal tone became the signature sound of BTS's biggest global hits, from I Need You and DNA to Dynamite and Butter. His solo tracks within BTS albums, including Begin in 2016, Euphoria in 2018, and My Time in 2020, demonstrated his steady evolution from a gifted teenager into a world-class pop vocalist. By November 2022, when he performed Dreamers at the opening ceremony of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar before a global television audience of over 1 billion people, Jungkook had established himself as a standalone global icon. But when Hybe launched Jungkook's official solo era in mid-2023, the scale of corporate investment and promotional firepower deployed behind him surpassed anything the company had ever executed for a single artist. On July 14, 2023, Jungkook released his debut solo single, 7, featuring American rapper Latto. The song was explicitly engineered for global mainstream pop dominance. Hybe America CEO Scooter Braun personally facilitated the project, bringing in elite Western hitmakers including producers Andrew Watt and Sakat to write and produce the track. Behind the scenes, Scooter Braun and Hybe America invested heavily in securing elite production teams, licensing fees, and top-tier music video budget in Los Angeles. When 7 dropped, it achieved over 15.9 million day one streams on Spotify, setting a record for the biggest debut for a song by a male artist in Spotify history. To build on this momentum, Hybe launched a relentless global media circuit. Jungkook performed live in Central Park for Good Morning America's summer concert series, headlined the 2023 Global Citizen Festival in Central Park, performed on the BBC Radio 1 Live Lounge in London, and held a surprise live concert at TSX Entertainment in Times Square, New York, drawing thousands of fans who paralyzed traffic across Midtown Manhattan. The corporate machinery behind 7 operated with absolute precision. Hybe secured high-profile global Billboard campaigns in New York, London, Tokyo, and Seoul, arranged high-impact appearances on American network television, and negotiated dominant playlist positioning across major streaming platforms. The commercial results were historic. 7 debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, the Billboard Global 200, and the Billboard Global Excl. US charts simultaneously. On Spotify, 7 smashed global streaming records by reaching 1 billion streams in just 108 days, becoming the fastest song in Spotify history to cross the 1 billion stream threshold, dethroning Miley Cyrus's Flowers. When his debut solo album Golden dropped on November 3, 2023, it sold over 2 million copies on its very first day according to Hantio chart metrics, eventually debuting at number 2 on the Billboard 200. Yet it was precisely this staggering commercial rollout that brought the broader conversation about Hybe's internal fairness into sharp focus. For global observers and fan data analysts, the massive resources allocated to Seven and Golden stood in visible contrast to the promotional handling of other members' solo releases. While V faced promotional gaps for Layover, J-Hope navigated a debut launch missing physical CDs, Jimin endured unaddressed chart filtering deletions for Like Crazy, and Suga carried an entire world tour on his back. Jungkook received the full, unobstructed weight of Hybe's global corporate infrastructure, radio servicing teams, and international label partnerships. It was not a question of whether Jungkook deserved the support, his historic numbers proved his star power beyond doubt, but it clearly demonstrated that Hybe possessed the capability to deliver world-class global promotion when corporate leadership decided to make an artist their central commercial priority. That elite status was underscored by the extraordinary financial and luxury rewards that accompanied his solo run. Long before his solo debut, Hybe founder Bang Si-hyuk had established a precedent of high-value equity sharing. Prior to Big Hit's initial public offering on the Kospi Stock Exchange in October 2020, Bang Si-hyuk personally gifted 478,695 common shares of company stock to the 7 members of BTS, dividing 68,385 shares to each member. As Hybe's valuation soared, those gifted shares grew in value to over $20 million per member, making BTS the first K-pop group in history whose members held significant individual equity stakes in their parent conglomerate. When the time arrived in September 2023 for BTS to discuss their second contract renewals with Hybe, corporate leadership understood that securing all 7 members was essential to maintaining Hybe's stock stability and market capitalization. Financial filings published in September 2023 revealed that Hybe's board of directors authorized a massive contract renewal package valued at tens of billions of Korean won per member, demonstrating the immense economic weight the 7 artists held over the company's future valuation. For Jungkook, who had delivered the biggest international solo single of 2023, the luxury recognition reached unprecedented levels. Global fashion house Calvin Klein named him their global brand ambassador in March 2023, featuring him in worldwide denim and underwear campaigns that blanketed major cities worldwide. Following the historic success of Seven and the finalization of the 2023 contract renewals, label executives and global brand partners commemorated his record-breaking achievements with lavish personal gifts, including bespoke luxury timepieces, custom high-fashion jewelry, and high-end automotive privileges reserved exclusively for the company's top-tier global revenue drivers. On December 12, 2023, just 1 month after releasing Golden and breaking global music records, Jungkook officially enlisted in the military alongside Jimin, entering the 5th Infantry Division Training Center where Jin was serving as an instructor. He put his record-breaking solo career on pause at its absolute zenith, choosing to fulfill his duty so that all 7 members could reunite on schedule in 2025. The image of the Golden Magne, who had once arrived in Seoul as a 14-year-old boy sleeping in a cramped basement dorm, receiving luxurious rewards fit for a pop king, was the ultimate symbol of how far BTS had brought Hybe. Yet when you look at the complete, documented picture of BTS across all 7 members, a far more complex reality emerges than any corporate PR press release will ever admit. BTS did not become a global phenomenon because Hybe was a perfect, flawless company. They succeeded because 7 distinct individuals, RM, V, J-Hope, Jimin, Suga, Jin, and Jungkook, possessed an extraordinary level of talent, resilience, and personal loyalty to one another that survived creative burnout, promotional imbalances, physical distribution missteps, chart filtering controversies, corporate maneuvering during military enlistments, and the immense pressure of global fame. Each member faced unique structural hurdles within the corporate machine that profited from their labor. But through every obstacle, their bond with each other and their unwavering connection with millions of fans worldwide proved stronger than the administrative flaws of the system around them. The facts speak for themselves. Hybe built an empire on the backs of 7 young men from South Korea, but those 7 young men proved that true artistry, sacrifice, and solidarity can never be manufactured by a corporation, and it can only be earned by the artists themselves.